What can the seas tell us about the stars? And can the stars tell us about the seas? On this episode of the Colonize the Ocean podcast, we talk with Dennis Chamberland about the relationship between space exploration and underwater exploration. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Hello guys, welcome to another episode of the Colonize the Ocean podcast. Once again, I am Adam Jewell, and with me as always is Brendan Traxler, the founder of Atlantis Sea Colony, and he's looking mighty dapper today. Brendan, how are you doing?
I got a haircut, so I'm looking good.
Oh, you look just handsome as can be.
Thank you. Too kind.
So today we got a guest that we've been chasing down for a while, and we finally nabbed him. We got him to take some time out of his busy schedule and do an interview with us and join us on the podcast. We got Dennis Chamberland. And Brendan, why don't you do a little bit of a background of Dennis quick, and then we'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis is gonna. I mean, what hasn't Dennis done is the question I think we do talk about here. But no, Dennis, I don't know. I've been talking to you for a while now, but I found your book, and I was on vacation somewhere, and I shot you an email, and I don't remember what happened. There wasn't much conversation at that point in time, but then a couple years later, I hit you up again, and we just struck up a conversation, got talking, and here we are today. You know, been following your work for quite a while, and I don't want to give anything away because I want you to explain everything that you do. But author, involved with NASA, underwater habitats. You got the whole gamut there, and I'm sure I've missed a lot of it too. So, without further ado, go for it.
Well, when you get to be my age, if you don't have a big resume, what are you doing, right? So, I am closing 70 years old. I just turned 69 and had a very wonderful long career doing many things, and hopefully there's at least 30 or 40 or 50 years left to do many more things. And so there's a lot on the plate today. There's a lot that we've done and that we're very proud of and very happy with and very excited about. And I just wanted to say up front here, Brendan, you and Adam are really holding up an important end of this undersea colony dream for so many people. You're keeping the dream alive by, for example, by this podcast and all the things that you're doing. And you guys really should be proud of what you've done and what you are doing, because it's making a big difference. And you should keep it up. And of course, it's easy for me to say since I'm not the one that has to burn all the time. But it's an important thing that you're doing. And I know those of us in the very tiny, small community of undersea habitation and exploration, I really appreciate you guys. And so thank you. Thank you on behalf of all of us, and please keep it up.
Well, thank you. That's super kind of you to say. I appreciate that.
No, and I appreciate you inviting me on your show. And you had our chief engineer, Joseph Bishop, with you a couple of months ago, and both of us are tremendously excited about your program and how it's all going to come together. It's a big ocean.
Exactly. And
I've had a gentleman come up to me who's involved in a similar program, not as successful as what you've done, but he was very bitter that there was actually two of us in the ocean. There's 3/4 of the planet just wasn't big enough for two people. So I'm very happy that you have a great attitude and that you have a very positive and constructive attitude, and in a community that's so tiny where everybody knows everybody else, you can only go in one of two directions. You can go big and go strong and be creative and build things and be innovative, or you can go negative and you won't have a friend in the world and you'll probably drown all alone. So
Yeah.
Well, thanks for inviting me into your program, and you're certainly welcome into ours. We'll share anything.
Yeah, no, that's what we see it too. I don't like to have, competition's good, but as long as it's like a friendly competition too, because it's a huge ocean, and we can definitely, it is a small community, and it's a very, I've said it before, I think it's a very disconnected community too, as far as, there's a bunch of different people trying to do different things, but there isn't any right way for one thing, and there's no real champion behind it too. But I have also had conversations with a gentleman that's in the industry as well that were pretty negative as well. So it may have been the same person.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, fair enough.
You shared with me who your friend was.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't the same guy.
That's sad that there's so many in this small community that share that viewpoint then, because had it been one person, okay, but if there's more than one, then yeah, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, enough of that. So who is Dennis Chamberland?
Well, Dennis Chamberlain is a lot of people, and I had a very successful long career with NASA and retired. I'm a husband, I am a father, I am a grandfather, I'm an engineer, scientist, writer. All of those things keep me busy day in and day out. But most importantly, more than anything else, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of the King. And I take my spirituality extremely seriously. And it is a part of everything I do, everything I write, everything that I build. And so if you want to talk about Dennis Chamberlain, you have to first talk about Dennis's spirituality and everything comes after.
Okay. So I guess where do we want to start? So
you wanted more than a 5-minute podcast?
I mean, I knew I was going to get there, but I also,
So let's build off of what he just said. So tell us how, because you said your spirituality is very important to you. How did that play a factor in your career path and like all your interests and your accomplishments? And like you said, you worked for NASA. You've obviously, we'll get to it, you've built underwater habitat. So like, if it's a very big thing for you, how did that play into your career?
Well, there's nothing about my life that doesn't include the spiritual component, and that's because as a serious follower of Christ, I pray without ceasing. And it is said that that the great Civil War general Robert E. Lee lips were constantly moving in prayer, and he never stopped praying. And I would like to think that is an attitude for my life, so that everything that I do comes about because of God's working in my life. And so my career at NASA, all the opportunities that I had there, the undersea colonies venture, they all have the spiritual component built in because it all came about because of that relationship. So there's no part of my life that has not been directed by that or influenced very strongly by it. No, I'm not afraid of it. As a NASA scientist and an engineer, when you're in a very technical field, there is truly a lot of atheism going on. I just have never been afraid of it. It's never or rarely adversely affected me. Occasionally it does, but rarely. And I just feel like there is a lot of spirituality going on in almost everybody I've met at the space agency. There's a little bit of atheism, but not much. And so everybody basically understands it, and they give you the right and the privilege to have your own beliefs without being attacked. So it's not really ever been negative for me in my career.
And how long have you been a believer?
Since I was 12.
Okay.
Basically,
so all your
my entire life.
Yeah. Very cool. It's hard to segue from that into other things here, because that is such a deep subject that a lot of time could be spent on talking about somebody's relationship with Christ and their spirituality, which I'm not a huge fan of the word spirituality, but
yeah, no, I understand, and I just want to make sure that there's no occasion where I shy away from it.
Sure.
So I'll lay it out up front, and I'm very proud of it and happy for it, and give the Lord all the credit for everything that I've done every accomplishment that I've made, and he's pulled me out of many, many holes that I've made for myself because of my own innate stupidity.
Yeah.
That has also been a component as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I understand that one probably more than I should, but yes.
Which means you are a true brother.
I accept that. Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about how in the world Dennis Chamberlain got involved in undersea habitation.
Let's go for it.
Would that be fair?
Let's go for it.
I'm going to go ahead and conduct your show for you, sir.
Hey.
So you sit there and
Hey,
nod.
you're taking a responsibility away from us, and that's all. That's all we could be.
You guys just sit
asking
there
for.
and nod, and I'll make sure you know when the show's over. So, well, it's been a dream of mine since I was a young child. I used to come home from a very small Oklahoma school, and I came from a small town, and I would get off the school bus and run as fast as I could into the house, because just about the moment I got home, Sea Hunt was on, reruns was on television. So I would sit there with my homework and watch Mike Nelson do his thing while I was supposed to be studying. And I just was enraptured by the whole idea of living undersea. So I would take 2-liter soda bottles, and I would make grasshopper colonies and ant colonies. And I would go down to the stream that was behind our house. I would weigh them down with rocks and watch them over the course of days and weeks at a time, living their lives out in these little underwater dwellings under the creek bed, which was kind of cool. And so it was just something that I always planned for. I always knew I would do. And so one day I was in the Navy, and I got my orders for Hawaii, and I got off the plane in Honolulu, and I walked down to my quarters, and lo and behold, they were on Waikiki Beach, Port Tarusi. And the beach was about 50 feet from my back window. And so I spent, I don't know, continuously, day in, day out, diving with a snorkel on that beach. I knew the bottom of that reef like the back of my hand. I knew where every moray eel was, and where every fish lived. And I just spent hours and hours and days underwater there on that Hawaiian beach. And I just absolutely knew that I did not want to get up and come into the barracks, but I had to, because I was out of air and I was tired and cold, because the water there is not exactly tropical warm as you would expect. But it was really a fantastic experience, and it really cemented in my mind the idea that I wanted to do that and live there full time. And so when I got into NASA, I began, I directed my graduate school curriculum into studying advanced life support systems and controlled ecological life support systems, in particular, in my research. And I did that in concert with my boss to be at the Kennedy Space Center, who was helping me set up my graduate program so that I would be eligible to come to work for him immediately. Long story short, I did come to work in the Advanced Life Support System office there. And one day he called me into the office, and he said, "I just had a visit from someone down in Key Largo. Why don't you go down there to that habitat and see if you can take some of our research down there and do some work?" And I said, "Is this a test? Are you joking me? Is this for real?" He said, "No, it's for real." And so we went down there, and we planted the first agricultural crop ever planted in a habitat on the seafloor, and harvested that. And then that snowballed into more interest in the agency, and we were able to build a habitat, the Scott Carpenter Station, and we took it down for 2 summers there. 30 missions in total. 30 days, 14 missions involved in that, and it was just phenomenal. And of course, that only whetted my interest even more, and that led to the Atlantic expeditions, and here we are today. So that's how that all came about.
So where was it along the way that the draw or the pull to NASA came into play? Where was that in the whole play? How did you get there, I guess?
Well, it's a difficult thing, because I find it very hard to separate advanced life support systems in my mind from undersea advanced life support systems or undersea colonies or lunar colonies or Martian colonies. To me, it's all just an advanced life support system count.
Sure.
So therefore, it was a natural fit for me because, as my boss used to say in advanced life support, he would say that we spin off from NASA to the private sector, but the private sector also spins off back to NASA. So these advanced life support system concepts, they spin off in both directions. And so if you develop something in the private sector that NASA can use, NASA's happy to receive it through a small business innovative research grant, or we can spin off the NASA technology into the culture in many different ways. So it was an easy fit for me. It was an easy fit for my boss because he also knew that an advanced life support system that works in a remote and extreme environment will work either on space or under the sea, and the technologies are rolling in both directions. So it was a natural fit for me,
Okay.
and it still is. I'm still writing books in both directions. I write books about undersea colonization, and I write novels about undersea colonization, and I write the same novels about space exploration.
And on that point, how many books do you actually have out there?
I don't know.
Really?
We we are in the throes now of reconstructing our publication business. One of the things that we're doing is taking a look at the products that we do have, and they are very thick novels. They're 600-page novels in terms of the fiction books. And in today's market, those don't do very well. So what does very well in today's market are the series books. And so economically, they just do better, they sell better, and they just get more attention in the marketplace. So we're busting up our big, long novels into series and trilogies.
Okay.
We're in the process of doing that now. And of course, that's unfolding 3 books where there was 1. So now I think the count is up to 23, but honestly, I don't good count on that. But it's a meaningless metric because I'm always writing continuously 24/7, and so whatever number of books I have, and I don't.
So has writing always been a passion of yours then as well?
Absolutely, I was. I contend that you're a born writer, or if you're a writer, you're born that way. And most people are not. They don't like writing. They find writing to be tedious, and they find it to be a chore. And especially when you get into writing projects that go on for months at a time, and you have to spend time on it every day, most normal people don't want to do that. So therefore, I think it's a genetic thing. It's just a gift that some people have, and I've got it. And that means that I write about anything and everything. I'm always writing continuously, always on Facebook, putting these tones out, and always home writing another page on the next novel or the next book or what have you. Something that I have been gifted with and that I do. And if you look at some of my reviews, some people don't think I'm so gifted. If you look at some of my other reviews, some people think that I am. So the key there is don't read your reviews because
Right.
it can't do you any good either way.
Yeah.
But right now we have a book coming up in probably late September or early October called Departing Earth Forever. And it's a volume 1, volume 2 book about the future of manned space exploration beyond low Earth orbit into deep space. Of course, we're talking about anywhere above 36,000 miles above the Van Allen belts. We're talking about lunar exploration, and we're talking about Mars exploration in particular. And the book is all about the exploration model that we are now using that I call the Apollo exploration model, which has expired. It's archaic, it's dangerous, and it's going to kill a lot of astronauts. Got to get in there, we got to figure it out, and we got to change it before the disaster. We will change it. I mean, we're going to change it one way or the other. And the book is just saying, look, people, we already know where the problems are. Let's go fix the problems before we start losing crews. But right now, if you look at the world, if you look at all the nations of the world that are building manned spacecraft, and you look at SpaceX in particular, every single one of those outfits are building Apollo era systems. And every single one of those spacecraft are going to kill astronauts. They're going to kill them on the moon. They're going to kill them on the way to Mars and on the surface of the moon. What we have to do is take a look at what we're doing, step back, redesign, and then go forward before we have to do it the hard way. And that's what it's all about.
So does that mean that you're coming out of retirement to go back to work for NASA to be able to help out with all that stuff as well?
Well, no, I will be very happy to sign their books, autograph their books for them. I'm not going to go back to work. I've done my duty, and so let me just read you where this comes from. Have both of you read Undersea Colonies?
I have.
Yes, one.
I have not, because I just don't read books at all.
Adam,
I let my wife do that.
What's going on here? Okay. Adam, if you had the book in your hand, you could go to page 5. I'm going to read to you from the book so that you can never say you haven't read a word of Undersea Colonies.
Gotcha.
This is page number 5. It says, the 5 principles of undersea colonization. First principle. Okay, you all listening? Everybody listening? In every exploration system, we must require the systems we build to adapt to the human standard rather than expect the human to adapt to the machine or to the environment. And in every design activity, we will protect the human as a primary objective. Now, who got that right and who got that wrong? Come on, guys, it's a test. Who got that right and who got that wrong?
Well, as far in the history you're talking?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
let's go ahead and focus on undersea exploration. Who got it right and who got it wrong?
Are we talking like Cousteau?
Yes.
Okay.
You go ahead and use his name. Did he get
I was going to say Dennis Chamberland got it right. That's what I was going to say.
No. We're not done yet. Thank you, Adam. You have, we will give you an A for today. But let's talk about Cousteau. Okay? What did Cousteau say at the end of his career? Cousteau said that colonizing the ocean was totally impractical. And what did the Navy say about undersea colonization? They said that it was not possible because of the death of Barry Cannon in Sea Lab 2. Both of the people ran into a brick wall at the end of a false narrative in exploration. NASA's about to hit the same brick wall for the same reason. And the response to that by the organization that commits the error is that they can go forward and correct their model and do it over, or they can drop back and say, this was never practical at all. And the human nature is, once you reach the brick wall or once you reach the disaster point, it's just to throw up your hands and give up and walk away. And you know what? We're in danger of that in space exploration. If we don't get it right, we're in danger, particularly as a country like the United States, whose NASA is funded by the taxpayer, is to find that you wind up with that disaster where 20 or 30 people are killed, and then you just throw up your hands and say, we're not doing this anymore. When you can skip that whole phase by redesigning and doing it right. And so you don't want to wind up like Cousteau, and you don't want to wind up like the Navy and get out of the business because you weren't smart enough to correct your path and do it over and do it right. That's where we are basically in both ocean and space exploration. Dennis Chamberlain did not do it right because he never had the opportunity. Dennis Chamberlain never had the money to do it right. Because in order to correct the undersea exploration paradigm, you're going to have enough money to make your habitats a locked out habitat. And those are very expensive.
Yeah, talking about the space aspect, and that's probably getting my gut here recently. The more and more I've been, following SpaceX and the Starship and stuff along those lines. Like, sure, the design and stuff is great, but my gut tells me that either Elon's not focusing on it, or he knows he's got a bigger problem there. And sure, you can fly a ship there, but there's so many other components, which I'm not even knowledgeable about, that come into play that aren't being addressed here.
Okay, now let's enumerate those. You brought up some good points. So what's the number one thing that he hasn't taken care of?
Almost any. I mean, he can ship people there, but there's nothing to do once you get there, which he's got a plan for that. But radiation, which once again, you can shield it.
That's the number one problem that NASA's going to have. NASA's building a ship. This is mind-boggling to me. NASA's SLS Orion spacecraft. What do you think that cost the taxpayer to build and to launch each individual mission, according to the NASA General Accounting Office in November of 2019? What do you think they're putting the estimate at for each individual launch?
It was like the cost of one rocket for each Dragon. It's like, it was ridiculous. I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was ridiculous.
I know. I remember the numbers. It's
Okay.
in my book. If you want to find out the numbers, just buy my damn book. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. You knew that was going to happen. You forced me into that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Brought me into a public forum and forced me to jam my book down your throat. Okay,
I know.
so here we go. The number is $4 billion per launch. Now, let's put this on the map so you can see it with your own eyes. Here you have NASA over here on Launch Complex 39B, which is the NASA launch pad. 3 miles away is the SpaceX launch pad 39A. Now, on 39B, you have the NASA SLS Orion rocket. They're going to light the fuse, $4 billion.
If it ever gets finished.
Not, you're right. But let's assume they're going to make it. $4 billion. Over here, 3 miles away, you've got Elon Musk with his Falcon Heavy. We're not even talking Starship.
Yeah.
But Starship is a whole nother magnitude different. But let's talk about the Falcon Heavy. He has virtually the same payload capacity, but a little less, but virtually the same as SLS out on pad 39B. The taxpayer's going to get charged $4 billion for one of the NASA launches. What do you think Elon Musk is going to charge the taxpayer to put virtually the same payload into orbit?
Yeah, I mean, you got the numbers right in front of you, so it's a little unfair.
A fraction.
That is right, Adam. It is $90 million compared to $4 billion. Or it's a factor of 22 times more expensive to launch the NASA payload than it is to launch the SpaceX payload, private company versus federal dollars. So if you're Congress and you're faced with launching a payload into orbit and you're given a bill of $4 billion versus $90 million, which bill are you going to want to pay?
Yeah.
This is a trick question, so think about it.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about what Congress wants to pay, it would be the $4 billion because it's a funding thing. Yeah.
Why would Congress pay $4 billion when they could get by with $90 million?
Yeah.
Why? Come on, Adam. Why would they do that?
So they could constantly get that same amount of funding.
Nope. Because the government owns the printing press. When they run out of money, they print up some more. They don't care that the launch is that much different because they're in charge of the funding and they want the political capital that comes with all those NASA centers based on those states across the country. They worry about that more than they do the amount of dollars it costs per mission. Therefore, they give themselves permission to waste money. And that's how you get the problem of maintaining the status quo, even though the status quo is ridiculously, abhorrently, sinfully expensive, and it doesn't do the job that you intend it to do. It's a dangerous architecture. Now, over on pad 39A, he also has a dangerous architecture. But the difference between NASA and SpaceX is that NASA can retool their systems as they did with the Starship in a matter of 18 months and starting over from scratch, start a whole new system, which Elon Musk did 18 months ago. It's an amazing system. NASA couldn't start over in 18 months, even if they only had to go through their meetings to start over, much less redesign and build hardware. That would just be impossible with NASA. That's what you got going out there on the launch pads, and those are the cost differences between the two different launch systems. Very impossible for NASA to make a quick and dramatic change in their space architecture design.
Right. Well, it's also, not only because of the bureaucrats of the whole thing, but it's all pieced out the 50 different companies doing different little things, and yeah.
That's right. And all of those companies are decided by the NASA centers who are spread out across the country for political capital.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're located where they are. Otherwise, why would you launch a rocket from Florida and immediately take over in Houston?
Right.
Everybody thinks that's normal, but it's really bizarre.
Which, let's, on that, we're talking about, I'll segue it back into the ocean world a little bit with that. So, Starship, obviously, Elon's been talking about having a floating launch pad out in the ocean, which is going to have to be out there a little ways down the road.
Not far down the road.
Well, no, not especially. Well, Elon time it may be farther, but that got me thinking. If he goes out there far enough, he starts launching international waters. How does that change the scope of who SpaceX is and what they're doing if they're not launching off of American soil anymore?
I don't think it changes the scope at all.
Okay.
Because if you look at the international waters and the laws concerning territories, there's a certain law for 13 miles out, then there's another law for 200 miles in the exclusive economic zone. And where is Elon going to go? Is he going to be in that gray area between 13 and 200 miles? And if so, how does that relate to the Federal Aviation Administration? And how does that relate to all of the other concerns and laws that he has to deal with? He's going to deal with those laws anyway. So he really has nothing, in my opinion, he has nothing to gain by going out into international waters. I don't see how that changes anything.
Okay. That's just something I've been throwing around, and who better person to ask than you? So there we go. But hey, let's get back.
I'm sorry, but I'm not a lawyer, sir.
Well, no,
I'm insulted at that.
I apologize again, man. This is just becoming a disaster interview, is what this is.
And don't call him sir either. He doesn't like that.
How do you say it's a disaster? Have I messed it up that bad?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, this is good.
No, we haven't had to re-record it like one of our other podcasts,
right.
So it's not a disaster yet.
That happened one time.
I'll never let it down either.
You had to re-record it? Why?
Because we didn't have the audio working for some reason. We didn't figure it out until after it was recorded.
Fortunately, we weren't interviewing anybody that time, so it was just us. But
okay.
Yeah. Okay. But let's get back to Scott Carpenter Station, and walk us through the design and what you guys were thinking when you were approached to start doing this, and how you got to where completion of the thing.
Really an interesting story because when we first decided to do that and we got our funding to do it, we were going to put the habitat in the living seas at Epcot. And so we went to those guys and we got our design approved through Disney and all of that. Then we went to the engineers and we went out to the living seas and they showed us how they take the roof off of the building there where the aquarium is and drop big pieces of equipment down through the overhead. So we had that all set up and prepared to go, and then all of a sudden the Disney lawyers got cold feet. And there was some discussion about how much it was going to cost for the Disney people to maintain the habitat, and therefore they were going to bill NASA. And all of a sudden, the costs spiraled completely out of control, so that it was no longer a situation where Epcot and NASA were sharing resources in order to accommodate the needs of both. Disney wanted some upkeep capital that NASA was unwilling to provide. So immediately we switched to Key Largo, where we had a completely different arrangement. We had a very affordable arrangement in terms of our budget, and it completely changed the design of the habitat because it was a brand new situation where the situation was completely different than the Epcot fish tank. So that forced us into a redesign, and which was a very beneficial thing in the long term. It worked out very, very well. We had a fantastic relationship with the people down there at Key Largo at the Marine Resources Development Foundation. And everybody was very happy with the arrangement, and we were able to conduct missions there for 2 different summers in 1997 and 1998. It worked out very well, and it was also a trailerable habitat, massively heavy, but it was a trailerable habitat. And we designed it to take to schools so that we could run the flatbed truck up to the school parking lot, unload the habitat on its legs, and the kids could take tours through the habitat at our different school stops. So we did that for a couple of years also, and that worked out very well.
So on the design elements of it, I'm assuming for the people who haven't seen it, which we'll throw up images and stuff along those lines on it, but you entered in through a moon pool of sorts, or?
Yes. It was open to the sea.
Yeah. And how many people at a time could be in it?
Well, we had as many as 4 in there. It was designed comfortably for 2 permanent occupants, but you could have 3 people in there for a longer period of time. 4 people was overloading it, but 3 people could sit in there for a extended period of time, but normally there were only 2.
And how long were you down in it?
The longest time that my dive partner, by the way, was my wife, Claudia.
Okay.
So we stayed on one occasion for 11 days, continuous days. And I believe we also went on another period for 9 continuous days. And so those were the 2 longest unbroken missions that we spent in there. It wasn't challenging at all. It was extremely doable. We never felt like we were ready to go at any time. As a matter of fact, the opposite was true. I didn't want to leave at the end of it. It was something that I had prepared for a long time and was not happy to leave.
Yeah, and how deep were you?
We were at the bottom was at between 30 and 28, depending on where you're at in the lagoon. But the hatch depth was at 21, and that had to be because that was the cutoff for decompression in salt water.
Yeah.
We were unprepared, or we did not want to pay for considering a decompression stop for any of us during that time. There were a lot of people involved in that program, and it would have been enormously expensive, way beyond our budget, to have a decompression system and all the personnel standing by. So we were right at the limit of our decompression capabilities, and we actually went through decompression protocols that were mimicked on the space station. In fact, we used NASA protocols, and the reason that we did is that when the astronauts go out to do their spacewalks, they lower their pressure in their suits to 5 psi so they can move their hands. And in so doing, they go through a similar decompression program as we went through, with basically the same saturation levels of nitrogen, only we did it in reverse. We would come up to the surface and release the pressure, and they would go outside to release the pressure. But it was the same microbubble profile. It was the same R values, or the probability of getting bent. It was almost identical, as a matter of fact. So we went into the NASA protocol and used their decompression protocols in order to keep us from developing bubbles in our joints or in our skin on the way back to the surface. And so it worked very well. We never had any problems with anyone.
And so, moving ahead, that was late 90s. What are you doing today as far as with the underwater habitation movement?
Well, as soon as the program was over, of course, we were ready to start the next phase, which is a private phase. There's a big difference in the private phase and the NASA phase. With the NASA phase, you had a budget that easily enabled you to do a project like that without any sort of challenges financially. But when it got into the private program, that became a completely different situation altogether. Claudia and Mr. Bishop and myself started the League of the New Worlds in 1987, And that organization was designed to spin off technologies from Earth to or from ocean to space and space to ocean. And we have used that as our platform for developing our undersea colonies and colony designs. We started to work on that in the late 80s. And so um, since that time, we have used that corporate platform to develop designs for undersea habitats and undersea technologies. We've gone through all kinds of phases, Brandon. Brendan, we talked about this before. As you develop your organization, you start to develop members, and the members all have their sets of expectations, and it becomes messy pretty fast. So we decided that we were going to continue a nonprofit corporation, which we have registered with the IRS in the state of Florida. We're going to spin off a for-profit corporation in order to develop our technologies and in order to raise the money that we need to build the structures in an undersea habitat. So we can use the nonprofit structure for education and outreach. And we can use the for-profit structures to build the technologies, to design the technologies, and to hire the people so that the people actually work for the corporation. When you have a nonprofit corporation, the membership basically rule and reign the corporation, and it's impossible to get anything done. So that's a lesson we learned the hard way. So we are changing our corporate model so that we are able to hire people on a corporate basis, and we are able to spend money and pay taxes like everybody else, so that everything is in a controlled sense. We are able to get from point A to point B without having a civil war.
Makes sense.
Lessons learned.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I know that if you go to your website, which will underseacolonies.com,
Right.
Yep. You've got a bunch of information about designs and stuff on those and what you're doing. Do you want to talk anything about what that looks like in the future for you guys?
Yes. That website is in dire need of updating. We do have a lot of designs and a lot of habitats on there. One of those habitats is actually um, in construction now, so it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But we have basically narrowed our focus down to two technologies. We call them enabling technologies, and we mean that if you don't solve these problems, you're not going. I don't care how much money you have, or if you have a bunch of money, you're going to waste it. And those two enabling technologies are power generation, remote power generation, and carbon dioxide removal. Those are the two long poles in the tent. Don't solve those problems. You may leave, but you're coming back. You're not going to stay very long. And you have to solve those problems, or you don't realize the ultimate goal of establishing a permanent undersea colony. And if you think about it, if you're going to power your undersea colony, how are you going to do that? Well, you can locate in a current if you want to, but that's dangerous if you ever go outside. It's also dangerous if you're trying to dock submarines with your unit, because the current is always pushing you one way or the other. So really, you don't want to ever be located in the current for many reasons. So therefore, the only other option that you have is to bring generators. The generators, of course, are either going to run on gas, or they're going to run on gasoline, or they're going to run on diesel, and they're probably going to have to be at the surface. Well, anytime you put a surface unit up above an undersea habitat, then you're dealing with all kinds of surface hazards and dangers that you absolutely don't want to deal with if you're trying to maintain a permanent presence undersea. So we have been working with a power generation technology that does not require fuel and does not require a line stretched to the surface. So that is where we are today.
Very cool.
As far as the CO2 technology is concerned, we have many different approaches going for that purpose. And in order to finish those, we have to have time in a habitat situation to test that adequately. And you can test it in a closed environment on the surface, but you really need that pressure differential if you're going to really understand what your gas exchange really looks like. So we have decided that no matter what our depth is, we're going to pressurize our habitat to 20 feet salt water in order to help us out on our engineering constraints a little bit. No, actually quite a lot. So with that pressure differential, you don't know what your gas exchange is going to be with a given technology until you experiment in that environment. So we have to wait for that to come out. That's the purpose of the habitat that we have now. It's an ambient pressure habitat that we can put down at ambient pressures and do those kinds of experiments.
And how soon do you think you guys are going to be doing anything with that?
Well, as you might expect, I know that you're a stranger to this, you and Adam. A lot of it depends on funding.
Yeah.
So we have tried the various funding mechanisms, and as it turns out, as I look around me in my life and I see people who did it right, there's three people that come to mind. One is Elon Musk, and the other one is Jeff Bezos, and the other one is Sir Branson. And those guys made their money the honest way and did for-profit businesses brilliantly and took their profits and started to do their exploration initiative. That's basically the only way that our capitalistic system allows for someone to step off and do this kind of exploration. And it's just a rat race to try to get out there and have people to fund you or find people to fund you and do it in a nonprofit organization. It's just almost not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So in my old age, I have discovered that you make money the old-fashioned way, and then you take your profits, and then you go do what you want to do. So that's basically the mode that we're into right now.
Makes sense. Where do I want to go with this? Anything, Adam, while I'm thinking here?
I've just been listening to you guys kind of do your thing because I feel like it's just listening to a couple old friends catch up and like just get really excited about the thing. But I'll ask this question. So Brendan and I have always talked about how there is such a strong relationship between underwater exploration and space exploration. And obviously you've had a lot of experience with both. Do you foresee that relationship continuing to, I guess, flourish as we do more with space exploration? Like we just talked about earlier that, you know, we've reached a point in our history where there's privatization of the space exploration and all that. So do you believe that there's still a lot that we can learn from underwater research and underwater habitats that could continue to benefit what we're going to be doing with space exploration and possible space colonization?
Well, Adam, if you look at let's back up a little bit and look at an example that was given to us by Albert Einstein. He had this thought experiment that he called the Principle of Equivalence. And are you familiar with this?
I remember learning it, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, long story short, he was able to put a man in a tin can and challenge the man in the tin can to determine whether he was in the deepest regions of intergalactic space, whether he was sitting on the surface of the Earth. And the difference between the two experiments was that one person in the tin can was sitting still on the surface of the Earth, completely enclosed in his tin can. And the other one was in intergalactic space, traveling at 9.8 meters per second squared in acceleration. And there was not a single experiment that either one of those people could do inside their tin can to determine whether they were in the middle of intergalactic space or whether they were sitting on the Earth. they could not determine where they were, because he called it in his experiment to define the boundaries of the special and general theory of relativity, that mass and acceleration was identical to mass in a gravitational field. They called it the principle of equivalence. So I bring that experiment up in order to suggest that if you're in a habitat and you're sitting on the surface of Mars and you require some things, you require oxygen, you require a certain atmospheric pressure, you require lighting, you require a toilet, you require drinking water, you require food, you require waste processing and disposal, you require gas exchange, you require all those things. And whether or not you're sitting on the bottom of the ocean, or you're sitting on the surface of Luna, or you're sitting on the surface of Mars, or you're sitting on the equator of Ceres, there's no difference. You have to have all of those things in your habitat keeping you alive no matter where you are. So therefore, if we understand the habitation potential under the sea, or we understand it on the surface of Mars or Luna, it's the same habitat. It's the same habitation principles. And of course, on Mars, you're going to have more insulation because the temperature is colder. On the bottom of the ocean, you're going to have thicker walls because the pressure differential is greater. Excuse me. So there are certain differences, but basically, almost everything else is the same. The requirements are the same. So we have to understand how to keep a human alive in a habitat, no matter where that habitat is located. Therefore, it's easy to say that we can have a tremendous crossover between our habitats in whatever environment that we decide to put them in. So it is useful to understand habitation in space. It is very useful to understand habitation on the ocean. And as a matter of fact, we called our undersea station the Space Analog Station because it was analogous to what the astronauts would have to be doing in space in their environment. And what the astronauts are doing in space is analogous to what people are doing on the bottom of the ocean. Their habitats are keeping you alive. The habitats are growing plants. Their habitats are providing toilets and food and entertainment, have a microwave or whatever you need. They have a fresh water for you to drink. It's all the same, no matter where you're located. Make sense?
Yeah.
I think so.
So I'll follow up on that then. What do you think, whether it's space or underwater, the minimum size habitat needs to be to live indefinitely in?
I'm sorry. The question is, how big should it be?
Yeah. What's your minimum size habitat that you believe needs to exist out there? Is Aquarius large enough to indefinitely live in, or does it need to be bigger?
That's a very good question. It's also profoundly complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's complicated by the fact that different people in different cultures have different expectations and different needs. And so therefore, you and I would think that we have to have so many square feet in order to feel comfortable. And, if we have children, or we have a wife, or we have in-laws staying with us, or whether we have cousins and a larger extended family living with us. In the United States, the standard for that is vastly different than it is in Kowloon, China. So the expectation of your living arrangement is one thing that you have to take into account when you're designing your minimal space. For example, if SpaceX is going to send 100 passengers to Mars on every flight, which they claim to be their design standard for Starship, they're going to send 100 passengers to Mars. And once they get to Mars, they're going to have to move into some place. I guarantee you it's going to be more on the Kowloon standard than it is going to be on the Florida standard.
Right.
So you have to calibrate your mind to what standard are you accepting. It's a different question when it comes to how much oxygen can you produce for how many people, how much CO2 you can filter out of the atmosphere, or how much fresh water you can provide, or what are you going to do with all that waste, or how are you going to recycle your waste in order to get your footprint back into your life support system? All those things are different questions. But basically, I think what you're asking is, what is the social question? How much room is room enough? And a lot of that depends on things we've not even thought about before. Like, what is a good design for a very small footprint for a person? What makes for a comfortable psychological design? And what is a comfortable footprint given the maximum ergonomic engineering you can pour into that space? That makes the difference too. Basically, I don't have an answer to your question, and I'm not sure anybody really does.
Yeah, I look at the tiny home movement and people living in smaller houses, but at the same time, they're always able to go outside at any point in time, and they've got doors they can open up to let fresh air, and it's a different psychological standpoint because you've got that freedom, right past the pane of glass where you're not going to have as easily accessible in space or underwater. So it definitely changes how you perceive that space you're already in.
Right. Well, when we lived in our tiny little Scott Carpenter Station for 11 days at a time, whenever I would get cabin fever, I would just go outside and swim laps around the habitat. I could get my aerobic exercise that way. I could get away from the habitat that way. I could feel the vast expanse of the lagoon where it wasn't inside the cooped up habitat. So that was definitely an advantage to me. And I suppose that if you're living on a Starship and you're headed out to Mars and you're there for 8 months, Elon Musk says he's going to put a one gravity track on there like that was featured in 2001 Space Odyssey. So you could get out and run around the track. And I'm sure that would go a long way to solve some of your feelings of being cooped up in a small space. So it doesn't take too many of those ergonomic considerations in order to meet the needs, the psychological need of living in a larger space. But I really can't tell you what the answer is, and I'm assuming there is no answer.
Yeah.
That a lot of psychological types will handle it better and differently than other psychological. Cultural types handle it differently. So it's a very complicated question.
Yes. I guess what is it? Is there anything out there that you're wanting to promote? Obviously, you go to your website, which we'll throw up as well. But is there anything else that you're wanting to promote or to get people, and your Facebook group too? Is there anything else like that you want to leave with people, or where to find you at, how to follow you?
Well, I think that right now the most useful place would be DennisChamberland.com. It has it has links to every place that that I go to. Another one would be DennisBooks.com, and it goes to QuantumEditions.com. So if it's easier to remember DennisBooks.com, then that's a good place. And all of the stuff I've written about is there. If you are a spiritually inclined person, there's a page there called Children of God series. You can go look at that. And if you want to send me some email, I'd be happy to respond to anybody who writes. I make it a habit of never ignoring an email unless it's negative or has negative energy. Then I happily throw it away. But other than that, I answer all of my emails.
All right.
Whatever.
So, with that being said, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners or our viewers with?
Words of wisdom.
Yes.
Yes, I have some words of wisdom. Actually, I have a question of wisdom.
Okay.
Where are you guys at on your project?
Ooh.
Can I interview you?
I mean, not where we want to be.
That thing you said about the money and the funding.
All right.
Well, even that, even with the pandemic and stuff along those lines, talking to vendors and stuff along those lines has been a nightmare. Just trying to get responses and stuff there too. So it's a little bit of everything. Obviously, money would solve all those issues, but we're messing around with some stuff, and let's see what 2021 does. But yeah, I'm hoping to have even a base prototype to test some stuff out in the water next year in some way or another.
Do you have a location for this?
Not yet. I've been starting to contact some different places, but not yet.
All right. Well, it's very fascinating, At some point in one of our past conversations, you offered me a visit for your facility, so
It
I'm
still
taking you up
stands.
on that.
It stands.
If it's in cold water, forget it. I'm not coming.
Don't
but
worry, it's not gonna be in cold water. I don't want to get cold water either.
I'm not a cold water diver. And you can take your drive suit and keep it dry. Because I'm not.
So we're not going to bring it up here to South Dakota, is what you're saying, Brendan.
Is that where you're at? Are you?
I am in South Dakota.
Seriously? Brendan, you're in Missouri, right?
I'm in Mississippi.
Mississippi. Oh, well, you're next to the shipyards down there.
Yeah, so I'm not. Yeah,
To build all your stuff.
exactly.
That's the right place to be right there.
Maybe so.
Anyway,
but yeah, to
give
answer
away
your question.
some of our secrets about our Mississippi shipyards, but we'll have to do that on the telephone.
There we go. All right, Dennis. Again, you get that bug there, Adam?
I've been fighting this fly the whole interview, and I've been trying to be subtle, and I've lost my patience. I'm sorry.
But,
Remember, it's a COVID fly, but be careful swatting it.
It's true. You don't want the COVID.
I'm rolling my dice now.
All right, Dennis.
Okay, guys.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we will have to do it again. I think there's a lot more ground we haven't covered that you.
There's still a lot more I want to be able to learn, and I like it when Dennis just reads me his book, so that reads the excerpts from it, because then I feel like I've gained it without actually having to read, which is kind of my thing. I'm not much of a reader.
Adam, this is your lucky day, because for this next pair of books that I'm putting out in September, October, they're going to be on Audible.
Oh,
so guess
awesome.
what?
That's right up my alley.
Read or listen, that's your choice.
That'll be right about the time that when I'm starting to snow blow up here in South Dakota, I'll have a book to read while I'm outside snow blowing.
No, you'll have a book to listen to.
Sorry.
Now listen, Adam. Things how we're buds now. We're fellow bubbleheads. I will send you a complimentary copy of that book. All you have to do is ask.
Okay.
And I'll charge you $400 for postage, but I will send you.
Well, I mean, there's always a catch, right?
Just kidding. Yeah, you can have it. You can have a complimentary copy of the audio book, no problem.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
But yeah, like Brendan said, it's good to be able to talk with other people that are in the same industry that, you've already broke into the industry. You've been doing this, so
I broke out of the industry.
What's that?
I broke out of the industry. It's called.
Well, yeah. So you're So it's nice to be able to talk with people and, like you said, form friendly relationships as opposed to the, aggressive competition and all that. So yeah, like Brendan said, we're gonna have to do kind of like a part 2 or a to be continued, because there's still so much that we can talk about, and just for your experience, your history, and all that. So with that being said, we want to have you come back, and I hope that you're not as elusive the second time around. So I'll be able to get you on.
I would like to promise you that I won't be. Let me promise you that I'll try not to be.
I'll take that. Brendan, I got nothing else, buddy.
I think we're good here. Dennis, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you for asking me. And once again, you guys are doing a great job. And keep it up. And pretty soon, we'll all have this round table together on the bottom of the sea.
Can't wait.
It's coming.
We would like to take this opportunity to thank our first patron, Edward. Thank you very much for your support. As a patron, you get perks such as early access to the podcasts and other videos. Plus, we'll have polls from time to time that you get to take part of. So we encourage you to hop over there for as low as $1 a month and support us on that.
Thank you guys for tuning in again to another episode of Colonize the Ocean podcast. As always, you can check us out on our social media platforms. You can see us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Library, YouTube, Reddit. All you got to do is look for Atlantis Sea Colony and you'll find us. Also, if you're able to donate to help us support our project, go to www.patreon.com/Atlantis Sea Colony. For any other info and the links to all those, you can go to www.atlantisseacolony.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.